So in here, I'm guessing we have another watch from the San Martin official store on AliExpress. Now, as bad as it sounds, I was too busy to reply to their email about this. I've got a secret project going on behind the scenes, nothing to do with San Martin, and it's taken up a lot of my time. But yeah, this showed up on my doorstep, and I'm pretty sure by the size it can only be one thing. So let's have a look, see what they've sent me, and see if it's anything that's worth checking out for you guys. I think I know which one this is. It should be like a dive watch with incredible luminescence, I think. Oh, how unusual. SN0129. Now, I've already reviewed a couple of SN0129s of different sorts. One of them was a desert dial. We then had an aventurine dial, I think it was. And then there was a jade dial as well. But I thought this would be something else unless they share the same code name, so who knows. Let's see what they've sent me. Ah, yeah, this is the one I thought it was, albeit in a very odd color scheme. And I'm surprised this is called SN0129. So as you can see, it's a dive style watch, whereas the other two were much more of a traditional GMT, and then they just did a bezel-free version of it as well, whereas this is a full-on dive watch, so it surprises me that they're using the same code name. Now, one thing I can see straight away from under the film is the bracelet has changed, and arguably improved, I would say. Now, the main change between this bracelet and the previous one is, number one, I mean, maybe it's just the finishing, but it looks better integrated. I think that's partially because this version of the SN0129 has brushed flanks instead of polished flanks, which just goes better with the predominantly brushed bracelet. But they've also switched up the polishing, so instead of the stereotypical central polished link, they've now got this chamfer down the edges, which I have to say I think I personally do prefer. I think the central polished link has just been used so many times, it's nice to see something slightly different from that. Now there is a screw link popping out there, so I better screw that back in. It almost looks like a quick change system because you've got screws present on the penultimate links there, and then a gap, and then the regular screws. Oh, there we go, it's fully come out. Is that a QC error, or is that just one that's come loose? I've never had that happen before, and at least you know they're not cherry picking units for reviewers. At least it gives me a chance to try out the included tools, which have always looked very good, but I've never needed to use them before. Let's give this a little whirl. It doesn't seem to fit. Oh, it's a very loose fit anyway. Screwdriver is extremely well made, but the head on it just isn't sharp enough to fit consistently into the gap on the screw. So I think I'm going to have to go and get my own screwdriver for this, which is a shame. That seems like a fairly obvious oversight. And there we go, that's screwed back in with no problem. So yeah, I think someone just hadn't quite screwed that one all the way in at the factory, but an easy fix, and luckily not a fatal flaw from the looks of it. Rest of the bracelet is the same as some of these other watches from the looks of it. So it uses a really nice micro adjustment system. You pull this one up, you can slide it, a bit like a Rolex Glide Lock, and you get a decent range of adjustments. I maybe prefer the push button one, to be honest, but it's still better than most watches. As for the design, I'm just not feeling this colour combination, to be honest. Now, it does come in a few other colours, and unfortunately, I think there's only one in there that I actually quite like, and that's the white one with the white bezel. I think that one looks pretty decent. I think the rest just look a little bit mismatched. That doesn't mean this doesn't look high quality, because it definitely does, and it's got like an enamel finish. It actually says on the listing it's an enamel dial, and I've not seen like a grey enamel dial before on a watch, which is what this is, like a dark grey, and looks very, very sleek. And it doesn't really come across obviously on camera, but it just looks extremely clean. I'm just not sure that grey and orange go particularly well together, unfortunately. But I don't mind the actual design of the bezel and the font or anything. I think it looks alright. The case is a very similar one to the previous SN0129 watches, which is why I'm assuming it shares the code name, but I think it should still have been a different code name given it's substantially different. And now when you search SN0129 on Google or on AliExpress, you come up with like 20 different versions of the watch, and it's just not that easy to use. But I mean, it's an incredibly high quality watch, no doubt. Let's have a feel of this bezel. It's a really good bezel. This watch is currently selling for, at the time of recording at least, £184 on AliExpress. So with import fees, probably looking about $220 into the UK. Might be cheaper in other territories like the US. For that, this is definitely a very high quality watch. Doesn't have the GMT features of some of the other SN0129s. I'll read you off the specs real quick. So it's got a full stainless steel case, of course. That's almost certainly 316L from the feel of this. Got a sapphire crystal, 20 bar advertised water resistance rating. Within it is an NH35, which is a Seiko automatic. 120 click bezel. It's then got BGW X1 luminescence, and apparently at least some of this bezel should light up as well, which is why I'm guessing it's so luminous to look at. So we'll give that a test for sure. Test that crown. Yeah, the crown is very nice. Screw down. Very little back play on the bezel. Looks and feels really good. Legibility, if it wasn't for all them orange bits, would definitely be a problem. As you can see, the bulk of the Hansa markers blends in significantly with the background. In fact, yeah, they've gone for a tactical look here. I've just had a look off camera. These aren't the normal Hansa markers that San Martin uses, so they've gone with like a custom set of grey markers and hands which are colour matched to the dial. So yeah, it does give a very different look, not something I'm a massive fan of, admittedly. And they've also gone for a printed version of the logo, you might notice, which I'm assuming is because of the dial finish. Maybe it doesn't work with the typical applied logo that they use. Let's check the dimensions real quick to see if it's any different. It might be a bit thicker maybe than the other SN0129s. So it depends where you measure on the width. Somewhere in the ballpark of about 40mm wide. But the bezel is about 39.3. Lug to lug 46.8, and a thickness with the slightly domed crystal of 14.3. Without it, about 13mm to the top of the bezel. So it's quite thick. And let's look at it on my 6¼ inch wrist. Now this watch is definitely too big for my tiny arm, but as a whole, it's a fairly versatile size. This certainly wears exactly as the measurements suggest. Just not personally convinced on that colour combination. I wonder if maybe a black would have been a better alternative here. I know what you're waiting for. Let's get this under low light because this has got to be bright, surely. Wow, I think that's the brightest watch that I've ever seen after hundreds of watch reviews. Obviously, that's still under the UV, but that is making me squint. Oh, this is only an ISO 800 on the camera. So for context, this is the setting I've just changed my camera to that most watches are for lume tests. That's how bright this watch is. Let's see what it's like with the torch out. Oh my goodness. I mean, the bezel looks fantastic. It actually has a yellow glow, as does the rest of the watch. Now it is definitely fading medium speed, but it started out so bright that it's got a long way to fall. Ironically, one of the less legible watches in daylight is one of the most legible at night. So there it is, the new version of the San Martin SN0129, which I believe is the SN0129GD from the looks of the online listing. I'll link it in the video description if you do want to check it out. Like I said, the white version does actually look pretty good, just not really feeling the others. But it certainly has some extreme strengths and weaknesses, this one. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And I'll probably keep hold of this one in case I do some sort of best lume competition in the future, because this has got to be a big contender for that, especially for a watch at this price. The only other one I can think that competed in terms of brightness was about 2 or 3 times the cost at least.